Now, this video is going to be kind of weird and not at all like my usual content, but it's been like 4 months since my last upload, and I figured I might as well get something out as I work on something a little bit bigger than this, which should be coming out pretty soon, for real this time. But anyway, in my absence from YouTube, I've been playing a lot of video games, and here recently I decided to revisit one of my favorite series of games from when I was younger, the Arkham franchise, which includes the 3 main games: Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, and Arkham Knight. But also kind of Arkham Origins, but also not really, since it has an entire different cast and design and even development company. But none of that really matters, since I've only really been playing through the first 2, Asylum and City. And from the title of the video, you could probably take a gander at which one of those I'm going to talk about. Now, I fucking love these 2 games, and really the whole series, even though I wasn't really that big of a fan of the whole Tankmobile in the last game. But at the end of the day, I could go through all of these again and have a great time with any of them, and all of them. But the one I've always gravitated towards was Arkham City. Arkham Asylum was such a great game. Hell, pretty much every game for the next 5 years after it basically ripped its combat mechanics the fuck off. But it was too small, too condensed. Arkham Asylum by itself just wasn't enough for me to explore. There wasn't anything to find. Not to mention the giant monster Joker at the end, and I'm not even gonna fucking talk about that. And Arkham Knight was just too big. It's hard to do everything, and I'm one of those people that personally needs to do 100% of the game in order to feel like I got my money's worth, but it's just so expansive. And I know this usually isn't a bad thing, but for these series of games, it just felt like it didn't feel right. Playing in all of Gotham City it's great, don't get me wrong, but it's just too much. And I get it had to be that way because of the Batmobile stuff, but I've already talked about that. I don't like it. But Arkham City is my Goldilocks. Not too big, not too small, just right. It's just big enough for you to jump from building to building and be able to glide around and feel like Batman. And I fucking hate that phrase because that's what everybody uses. Feel like Batman, feel like Spider-Man. It's an overused phrase, and it's just, I don't like using it, but it's appropriate. You really do feel like Batman. Not to mention, it has the Batman Beyond suit, which I can't even begin to tell you how much I love. Plus, it has just the right amount of DLC. I don't need to play as Harley Quinn or Red Hood, and I definitely do not need to play as Azrael. Are you fucking kidding me? Just give me Robin and Nightwing as playable characters, and I'll be happy. Catwoman's there too, and she's, in my opinion, too big a part of the story. I would have rather it been Batgirl as an additional playable character, but I'm not gonna complain, at least not in this video. I know I'm already off track, so let's get this bad boy back on rails. This video isn't about the Arkham franchise as a whole, or really even Arkham City. It's about one boss fight in particular, Mr. Freeze. Mr. Freeze has been getting fucked over for as long as I can remember. Since 1997, the very beginning of time, which also was when Batman and Robin was released. And, we got this.
Breezy, I'm feeling hot.
I find that unlikely.
What do you say we heat things up?
My passion thaws for my bride alone.
Ooh, talk about your cold shoulder.
Yeah, so basically, it was a dark time if you were Mr. Freeze. But I can't really blame Joel Schumacher, because before the animated series, Mr. Freeze was basically this cold-blooded killer in the 60s, 70s, and 80s in the comics. Oh, wait a second. Yes, I can blame him, because Batman and Robin came out in 1997, and Heart of Ice, which is what most renditions of Mr. Freeze are based on to this day, that shit came out in 1992. A whole 5 years before this dumbass fucking movie. Alright, I could talk about the Joel Schumacher movies all fucking day. But, long story short, Mr. Freeze has been getting fucked over for years. But in Arkham City, Mr. Freeze has done pretty good, and I mean, I'm not really a fan of how he's like the Terminator with a robot voice, but it's a pretty good interpretation. But what specifically stands out is the fight. Mr. Freeze's boss fights is one of the best boss battles I've ever played, especially in superhero video games. One of the main reasons I hate the Joker boss fight in Arkham Asylum, and I know I said I wasn't going to talk about it, but we're going to talk about it. It's because it's not the Joker. He's not known for his fighting ability or his strength. It's the schemes and the mental games he plays with Batman. He's like the opposite of Batman. And it's always an intriguing dynamic they share, and it's usually about that dynamic, not about their fights. Batman can take the Joker out in 1 to 2 punches, but that's not what it's about, and I'm really glad they got this fight right. Freeze is known for 2 things, his superior technology and his intelligence, which he uses both during this fight to make it one of the most challenging in the game. Now, I'm not one of those people who uses hard and fun interchangeably. I would say once you know what to do, it's actually a pretty easy fight, but if you're playing it through on hard or even more so New Game Plus, this fight can be a bitch and a half to get through. In this fight, you aren't able to punch and counter like you have been able to with pretty much every other fight up until this point. Like that Ra's al Ghul fight. Fuck that. I hate that. Freeze's armor is immune to all melee attacks, so then Batman has to resort to his stealth tactics and gadgets. Also keeping in mind that he can track your movements and has these little robot things that can track your heat signature. So I've done this fight a bunch of times in preparation for this video, and as far as I can tell, there are about 11 ways that you can do to hurt Mr. Freeze during the fight. Again, I could be wrong, but these are just the ways that I was able to find. First, you can sneak around behind him and do a stealth takedown. You can do a takedown through the glass window, glide kick him, drop on top of him, use your RAC gun on the generator if he's near it to magnetize him. You can use your explosive gel on a weak wall and lead him to it, blowing it up when he's near. You can hide in the grate underneath his feet and do a takedown when he gets close to you. You can use a disruptor to jam his freeze gun and blow it up in his face. You can do a takedown when he's below you, which I believe you can do twice since there are 2 different areas where you can do it. You can turn on the power when he's standing in a puddle of water, electrifying him. And finally, you can kick him with a line launcher if you're in sight. So there are technically 11 times that you can hurt him in 11 different ways, which I believe on easy you have to do 6 times, on normal you have to do it 7, on hard you have to do it 8, and on New Game Plus you have to do it 10, which in itself might not sound too bad. The catch is you can never use the same tactic twice, because Mr. Freeze will alter his suit and the surroundings so that the player can never just spam stealth takedown. For example, after hitting him with a glide kick, Mr. Freeze will lower the air pressure or the temperature or some comic book shit like that so that Batman can't glide. The fight is so much fun because it basically takes what you've been taught so far in the game, which is to just either stealth take down the bad guys or just beat the fucking shit out of them. And it flips that on its head because those are the 2 things that you can't do. This fight is more Batman than any other part of this game, or this series really, because despite what the 3rd game would have you believe, Batman isn't Iron Man with a fucking tank. He doesn't have this mechanical suit that does everything for him. Bruce Wayne trained to be Batman from the time he was 8 years old to the time he was 25 years old. He learned to be the best in everything he could, so he could stand next to gods like Superman and Wonder Woman and be respected as an equal. This fight reminds the player that Batman can't solve everything with kung fu kicks and flips. The player has to do what Batman would really do in a situation, which is find Mr. Freeze's every weakness and exploit it in every way he has. And despite the heavy odds against him, he finds a way to overcome it. Because that's his real superpower. Not his training or his money, but his willpower and his determination to overcome the impossible.